from one discussion about Marvel to another discussion, and this one has already been, excuse me again, this one's been done by several people already, but I wanted to put my opinions onto it as well, and, well, it's my turn. Anyways, Marvel Studios producer considers it a red flag if prospective writers are fans of original comics, prefers to hire someone who's out of the culture. Now, he does mitigate his arguments by using things like Endgame. I like Endgame, to be perfectly honest. I think it was a fine send-off for the series. I don't think anything after Endgame is all that good. Well, no, those are Sony properties, so I don't count those. That being said, there's points to this that I agree with, but at the same time, you need to show respect and reverence to your characters. You need to know where they came from, what is their origins, what are the comics like, then create the story. That's what I would prefer. I would prefer you to stay as close to the source material as possible, but if you're going to take it in your own way, at least acknowledge what they were and where they came from in the comics. I don't need you to know every little aspect of the character, but I need you to know the basic details of who he is, who he or she is. As if it wasn't obvious enough from simply watching any of the studio's post-Infinity War output, producer Nate Moore, how many of you guys love talking about Nate Moore, has revealed that he believes the key to Marvel Studios' success is hiring writers who are out of the comic book culture over anyone who loves the source material. Now, pros and cons. Like I said, if you're out of it, you're not so married with certain smaller aspects, but you still need to know the base soul of what a character is. You need to know that Reed Richards here is more than just a stretchy dude. He is very smart. He is very intellectual, and he is extremely strong. Now, you don't need to know Reed Richards' favorite meal for Tuesdays, but you need to know the basics of him. You need to know the basics of Black Bolt. You need to know that Captain America's Captain America is Steve Rogers, and you need to know that nobody really likes Captain Marvel. Well, our current Captain Marvel. Everybody kind of enjoyed Marvel. Moore, whose career has seen him serve as a producer for such Marvel Cinematic Universe entries as Captain America Civil War, fantastic movie. Honestly, a fantastic movie, but that was right in Disney purchasing Marvel. So that is one of those movies that gets to slip through the cracks of Kevin Feige and all that. Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Do I really have to go in on that one? And most recently, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which is a disaster. Shared his insight into the Marvel Studios hiring philosophy during an appearance on November 16th episode of Ringers the Town podcast. Why do you name it these things these way? Speaking with host Matthew Baloney. I'm hungry now. Anyways, about his general experience working for the Disney subsidiary, timestamp 17 minutes in, Moore was eventually asked if there was some kind of a Marvel boot camp or something that you do with these filmmakers to ingratiate them into the world and knowing all the things that they need to know. Basic question. Does Marvel have a Bible? And as we know right now, DC is putting together a Bible. DC is putting together the bare necessities that you need to 100% know before you make a movie within their universe. These things cannot be changed. These things must be consistent. You need to know these base things. When you're dealing with a character, you need to know that, like, let's use Spider-Man, for instance. Now, granted, Sony changed up Spider-Man a lot, and I do have some problems with it. But let's use Spider-Man. Spider-Man gets bit by a radioactive spider, gives him powers, goes to conduct in a wrestling match to try to get money, fails to fails to stop a robbery. Robber shoots Ben. Ben then tells him, with great power comes great responsibility. Or prior to that as well. No, prior to that, with great power comes great responsibility. You know what I'm trying to do. Uncle Ben always dies. Uncle Ben's death is what propels Spider-Man to become a hero and not act in selfish means. You know, those things have to be... You have to have constants. You have to have Spider-Man eventually get with Mary Jane. You have to have Batman's family has always been shot in the alley outside of Zorro. Superman comes from Krypton, lands in Kansas, and is raised as a good down-home Kansas boy. Those things must be constants in your universe. Now, in between these areas, you can play around with stuff, but your characters must remain who they are. If they don't remain that way, you have issues. You get Kukulkan. To which the producer confirmed, not really. Nothing that some Marvel writers grew up reading and collecting comics, such as Avengers Endgame co-director Joe Russo, which he took several liberties on, and Black Panther director Ryan Coogler, which do we have to explain his liberties that he went on? More told baloney. One thing I think is interesting, and specifically for writers, I would say, is that a lot of times we're pitched writers who love Marvel, and to me, that's always a red flag. Now, why do you think that's a red flag? Why do you think that is? It's because the people who know Marvel know the truth, know how these characters are supposed to act. This plays on top of what Tarantino said in my previous video, where when you're hired to write for Marvel, you're a hired gun. You do as you're told. Because the directors, the writers, they don't get to do anything. That's always already decided for by Disney and Disney Marvel. They have the whole thing already mapped out for you. You're just a hired gun. You're a name. You're cast to just be on there. Everything else is already done. I don't want you to already have a pre-existing idea of what it is. Because you grew up with the comics, and that's what you want to recreate, he exclaimed. I want someone who's going to be hard on the material, who can go, what is this? I think there's a movie here, but maybe we should be looking at it in this way. Well, that's true, but you still need to have the core of each character. You need to have the core of the story. What is the basics of the story? Maybe we have a little liberties here or there, but I want you to stay as true to this as humanly possible. You guys haven't been doing that. Now, you have put out good work, like I've pointed out with Captain America Civil War. He points out to the Captain America trilogy, which took some liberties, and the writers and the directors weren't known for, reading the Captain America comic books. But, well, I'll save that when we get there. Offering up an example of what he was looking for in perspective writers, more than pointed to Captain America trilogy writers, Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, who weren't comic guys coming up, but were like, wait, Captain America? These seems a bit weird. What if we kind of looked at it this way? But at the same time, they kept Captain America Captain America. He was Captain America through and through. Now, they took liberties with the story because they didn't have some properties. They didn't have some things here or there. But Captain America was still Captain America from the comics. They at least knew the idea of Captain America. They just changed up the stories here or there. That's a whole lot different than what you guys have been doing at Marvel right now. You don't even know what your characters do. You have your characters get diminished for other characters that are less important. And they weren't married to anything. Nothing was sacrosanct. But you still had to have the basics of Captain America. Maybe his origin story is a little different, but you still have Red Skull. You still have World War II. You still have scrawny dude who gets injected with the super soldier serum. You still have these basics. And also when Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely were writing the original Captain America, they were working in a massive team where Foggy and all these guys were coming together, And they had people on there who knew comics. They had people on there who knew the basics, so they were able to bounce off of them as well to make sure that characters were properly portrayed. I think that's important to be able to go, look, the source material is great, and I love it, and comics work great in the medium they were built in, but that's not a direct one-to-one translation to the best version of the movie. Actually, it can be very one-to-one translations. Now, depends on your story. Are you doing a single issue of maybe a single moment, or are you doing a multi-issue massive story that takes time and development? One for one can work very well. Now, you also are limited by modern day technology. Sometimes we aren't there, and sometimes you have to take some liberties. That's understandable. Sometimes you don't have the rights to certain characters, but right now, Marvel, you have all the characters. You have the rights to everybody. Well, almost everybody. You can be doing the proper characters. You can be doing the proper storytelling. Modern day technology has come very far to the point that you can do basically everything correctly. You just choose not to. And sometimes it takes someone who's out of the culture to go, hey, I know you think it should be this, but maybe it should be this other thing. Well, depends. What is this other thing? Depends on that. You're not saying, well, I know Captain America is all for America, but maybe he's actually for Hydra. Oh, that went so well in the comics, didn't it? Turning to provide further support for his argument, more than put forth Thor Ragnarok. To be perfectly honest, I kind of enjoy Ragnarok. I thought it brought much needed change to Thor as a character, but going forward after that, it needed to do what it did, but they needed to build off of what they did with Thor, which made him more of a guy who experienced some more hardship, but also became knowledgeable of who he truly was. Finally, but they kept forgetting Thor just keeps forgetting who he is, though. And Thor Love and Thunder, which, do we really have to go into why that movie was a disaster? Director as a great example of that, too, because he was like, hey, I know Thor traditionally is a bit stiff, a bit Shakespearean, but what if we tweaked it? What if we tweaked the tone completely? Yes, but the difference is, now I said I like Thor Ragnarok. I thought it was a fun movie. But Thor is still a smart dude. Thor is still an intimidating dude. Thor should still be Thor. Thor hasn't been Thor for a very long time. Arguably since the first movie. Thor has not been Thor. Actually, questionably, Thor hasn't been Thor since Avengers 1. But at this point, Taika Waititi has butchered Thor to the point that you have, I just had his name, Chris Hemsworth. Too many Chris's in the MCU. Chris Hemsworth talking about how he doesn't want to come back to play Thor anymore. He doesn't like working with Taika Waititi. The tone of Ragnarok is all Taika. God, weird names. Because he wasn't married to Thor on the page, but he should have been able to remain who Thor truly is. Now, again, I liked Ragnarok. I thought it needed change to Thor because Thor was very dark, didn't have a good tone. Amp it up a little bit and make him a little bit more fun. But that led into things that I think are objectionably bad. Concluded the producer, believing himself to be complimenting the director rather than hitting the nail on the head as to why many fans have been turned off by Waititi's take on the God of Thunder. Yeah. Again, I like Ragnarok. I think it's a fine movie. It brought something to Thor that I thought was needed at the time. Just a little bit more levity. The Dark World was a bad movie and was very dark, and I thought he just needed something to kind of amp him up. But it had a decent story, I thought. Then you get to Love and Thunder, and that's a disaster of a film. I haven't read every Thor book. I haven't read a lot. I couldn't tell you of a run that is tonally anything like Ragnarok, which is true. Nothing is like Ragnarok. Now, Ragnarok takes liberties here or there. Ragnarok does things here or there. I wish Broomhilda was in the movie. I really do, but we don't have that. We have Valkyrie. But you also have to take into account that Taika Waititi completely butchered who Thor was, even in the series, even in the MCU. When you had Thor go from Ragnarok into Infinity War, that the reason those two worked together, and the reason why I thought Ragnarok actually worked afterwards, especially with Infinity War, was Thor became Thor finally knew who he was. He was the king of Asgard. Asgard is a people. All this stuff happens, and then immediately he encounters Thanos, gets beaten down, loses everything, and then gets set on this path to basically end Thanos because he took out his people. He felt completely defeated. He lost his brother. He lost his father. He lost his people. It was fuel for him. It took Thor to what should have been a proper path in Infinity War, but we got Fat Thor instead. Well, yeah, that was Infinity. No, that was Endgame. Sorry. But what Nate Moore is failing to recognize is something I've been hitting on this whole time. Now, he tries to use Thor as the example, but it's also the perfect example, counter argument. You need these writers and directors to at least know the basics of each character. Without that, you get Thor Love and Thunder. You get Falcon and the Winter Soldier. You get WandaVision. You get these things that just don't feel correct. They don't flow with each other. They break each other's canon. You need these to be congruent. You need these to you need to have that Bible so that you can say, hey, this happens here. This character has to act like this in a certain way. Play around with that. Make that work. But this is the story you're doing. Make it work. You can't, these are the points that have to be there. You cannot break those points. That is what is required, and that is something that is missing from the MCU as of right now. But with that, guys, give me your thoughts down in the comments below. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Share it out with your friends. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell for every time I put out a new video and go live. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.